Hey y'all, welcome back. This week I'm going to be starting out with making some delicious biscuits and gravy. I'm going to make just regular biscuits with sausage gravy and some eggs. I've been wanting some breakfast for the past couple of days, so I'm going to make some today, and I want it for dinner, so that is what we're going to do. I've got some flour in my bowl here, and all I'm going to do to this is add in some baking powder, about 2.5 teaspoons. That should be plenty. And I'm also going to add some baking soda. It's just going to help give it a little bit of fluff and little crisp edges around the edges of the biscuits. Not too much, because you can overdo it with baking soda and biscuits, and they will turn out hard as a rock if you add too much. And I'm going to add some salt, probably about 1/2 teaspoon, just to give the biscuits a little bit of flavor. And I'm also going to add some powdered milk. You don't have to add powdered milk. I just like the flavor that it gives. So I'm going to add probably about 1/4 cup. And it's going to help get these nice and fluffy. So I've got my little mixer here. I'm just going to mix this all together. Make sure all of this is nice and combined and there's no lumps of powdered milk or baking soda or baking powder, because it will create like little pockets in the biscuits and it's really bitter to bite down on. So just take a minute and make sure it's all nice and combined. Okay, now I'm going to add in about 1/4 cup of Crisco. You can do tallow or lard. You can do a mixture of tallow or Crisco and butter. Whatever you want or have on hand will work just fine. So I'm just going to mix this in until everything is nice and crumbly, has a little crumbly texture. Should take about a minute or two. So I've got everything in here is room temperature except for my buttermilk. And I'm just going to go ahead and add all of this buttermilk in here. I got about 1 cup. You may need a little bit less or a little bit more, depending on your flour. So I'm just going to mix this up until everything forms a dough. If I need more buttermilk, I'll add a little bit more. Alright, so I added just a little bit more buttermilk, and as you can tell, there's a little bit of flour that's left on the bottom. Now, the key to good fluffy biscuits is the less you mix it, the better. So just mix it until everything comes together, and then we're going to clean this up and get a little bit more extra room, and then we'll flour our board. All right, so I've got a clean workspace here, and I've got some flour here, and I'm just going to add some flour down on my board. Doesn't have to be perfect, because we're going to kind of pat these out and shape them into biscuit form. So just dump that dough right out onto the counter, even those little dry bits at the bottom. They will get mixed into the dough. Okay, we'll flour the top, flour our hands. And we're just going to mix this together and fold it over. And keep doing this for about 5 or 6 times until everything comes together. Now, if your board gets a little sticky, go ahead and add some flour down. Last fold. So I'm just going to pat this out to about 1/2 inch thick. I like to pat it rather than roll it, but you can roll it if you want to. I find that it makes the biscuits a little bit more dense but there's nothing wrong with that. If you want them that way, that is perfectly fine. Biscuits are delicious whether they're rolled or patted out. All right, so I've got that patted out. I'm going to grab my biscuit cutter here. And I've got a 2-inch biscuit cutter. You can dip this in flour if you want to. To me, it doesn't make any difference because you're just going to go straight down and straight up. So that way it doesn't seal the edges of the biscuits because you want the biscuits to rise. And I've got my pan here and I've already buttered the bottom. And all you're going to do is take your biscuits and put them on your little dish here, or your pan, whatever you're cooking it on. And you're going to space it about 1/4 of an inch apart. And then you're just going to gather up the dough, reshape it, refold it, add more flour if you need to, just to keep it from sticking. And you're just going to repat it out and keep going until all of your biscuits are done. Now this funny little guy here, I'm just going to pat it out, refold it. And this is what I like to call as the cook's treat, because it might look a little funny, but it's going to taste absolutely delicious. So we're going to put this guy right here on this pan. I'm going to wipe my hands off, or wash my hands rather, and then wipe the counter off. And then we'll get these buttered up and in the oven. Alright, so I went ahead and melted up some butter. And it's at room temperature, but it's still kind of warm. The pan is still kind of warm. So I'm just going to butter the tops of these biscuits. You can certainly skip this step. I just like the flavor of it. And it helps keep the biscuits nice and moist on top. And plus we're going to butter these again when they come out of the oven. So, like I said, you can skip this part if you don't want to do this part. Last biscuit. Now I've got my oven preheated to 425 degrees. And I'm going to pop these in the oven for about 20 to 25 minutes, just until they are cooked through and the tops are nice and golden brown, and they are going to be so delicious. Alright, so I've got my skillet here. It's over medium heat. I'm going to turn it down just slightly to medium-low, right in between medium and medium-low. And I've got some sausage patties here, but you can definitely use ground sausage. Either will work just fine. So I'm going to cook these up and break them up a little bit just to make like sausage crumbles. And then we will make some sausage gravy. Alright, so the sausage is cooked completely through. Now I'm going to add just a little bit of flour, probably about 2 to 3 tablespoons, depending on how much oil that you have or grease that you have in your pan. So I've got about 3 tablespoons or so of sausage fat in my pan here. I'm going to add about 3 tablespoons of flour, as well as some salt. Now I like to salt this now, so that way I don't have to salt it that much later. I'm going to add some pepper. Now season to your taste, because you can always add more later. And I'm going to let this flour cook just about a minute or two, just to cook out that raw flour taste. Turn my heat up just slightly. Turn it down to low so it wouldn't splatter the camera. Okay. And now I'm going to slowly add in some milk. It should take between 2 to 4 cups of milk, depending on how much you want to serve. I'm just going to add a little bit at a time, let it thicken up until it's as thick as I want it to be. Just remember to take your time, add a little bit at a time, so that way you don't get any clumps of flour. You don't want any clumps of flour in your gravy. So just be patient, keep it on low, and let it thicken up. Then you will get a smooth gravy. Now, once your gravy starts to thicken up, you are good to go. You can cut the heat off. Just remember that you want it a little bit more thin than what you think it should be, because it's going to continue to thicken as it sits. So this is the perfect consistency for me. I've got my heat cut off, and I'm just going to let this sit here. I'm going to cook up some eggs, and I'll show you the biscuits as soon as they come out of the oven, and I butter the tops. And then dinner will be ready. All right, guys, so I went ahead and cooked some eggs, and I've got my biscuits here. They are done and right out of the oven, so they're pretty warm. And these are what the biscuits look like. Now, you can do this however you want. I like to just split mine open, like yay. Look how pretty those are. And then you can top this with your gravy. You can crumble them up. You can have the biscuits on the side with the gravy on the side and do the dip. You know, dip the biscuits in the gravy however you want. So I'm going to go ahead and top mine with some gravy. I'll show you my plate. All right, you guys, here is my plate. Does that not look absolutely delicious? Just topped it with the biscuits with the sausage gravy, and I've got my fried eggs here, and this is going to be dinner. Now, you can serve this with whatever you want. I'm just going to have it as is. If you don't want sausage, you can just do plain gravy and have bacon on the side, or you can do plain gravy with sausage on the side. However you want to do that, it's up to you, but I am going to go enjoy dinner. All right, you guys, today we're going to be making a muffaletta. These are one of my favorite sandwiches. They are so good. We get them all the time here at the local pizzeria. So I'm just going to make them at home today. I've got all of my ingredients here. I've got a freshly baked muffaletta bread. It's cut, ready to go. I've got some ham and some salami, but you can do any kind of meat that you have. I could not find mortadella, but it's fine. You can use thinly sliced bologna. I don't like bologna, so I'm going to skip it. I've also got some Italian olive salad. This is crucial to a muffaletta. I've also got some Swiss cheese and provolone. So we're going to go ahead and get this going. For the meat layer, I'm just going to layer on some ham onto my bottom piece of bread here. You can add as much or as little meat as you want. They typically go a little heavy-handed on the meat. So we're going to do about 2 layers of this ham, like that. And then we're going to add on some of this salami. You can also do a pepperoni. So we're going to add a couple of layers of this salami. Okay, and now we're going to go in with some Swiss cheese and just layer that right on top of all of that meat. You can add as much or as little as you want. And then we're going to go in with some provolone. And this cheese is going to melt up and just be glorious. If you've never had a muffaletta, I highly suggest you try it. They are delicious. Okay, so I'm going to kind of press that down just a little bit. Now on the top bun, you're going to add a little bit of this olive salad juice. This is going to give it so much flavor. Right in to that bread. You can add as much or as little as you want. And plus, with it being olive oil, it's going to help it toast up rather nicely. So we're going to add some olive salad onto the top. And you want to add however much you want, really. But you kind of want to spread it out so where you can barely see the bread, because some of it is going to squish out when you press it down later. All right, so I'm going to get this in the oven for about 5 to 8 minutes, just until this cheese is nice and melted and everything is heated through. And then once that comes out of the oven, you're going to put the top piece of bread onto the top and leave it alone. You can make yourself a side dish. It is very crucial for this to sit after it toasts so it can absorb all that flavor. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven 5 to 8 minutes till the cheese is melted. I'm going to take it out, put the top bun onto this, and I'm going to make the second muffaletta and probably some fries to go with this. So I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Alright, so here's what the muffaletta looks like. I have gone ahead and let it sit, and I cut it into 4 pieces. Now, one of these will feed 2 to 4 people, depending on how big the bread is. So I'm going to go ahead and let this continue to sit, and I'm going to make some fries, and then I'll show you my plate. Alright, you guys, here is my plate. I just have some of the muffaletta here. Now, like I said, this serves 2 to 4 people, so I just got 1 piece of that, and then I just made some french fries in the air fryer to make a complete meal. And this was absolutely delicious. Like I said, I love muffalettas, one of my favorite sandwiches, but this was absolutely delicious. Alright, you guys, so I'm not really hungry today, so I'm going to make kind of like a late lunch, early dinner. And I'm going to make a sheet pan meal, just a super simple one. So I've got some vegetables here. I've got a bell pepper, a carrot, an onion, and some potatoes that I just halved. And I'm going to add these all to a sheet pan. But don't lose them first. And the hardest part of this meal is figuring out what kind of seasonings we want to go on this. So before I add the meat to the vegetables, I'm going to go ahead and season this up. I've got some salt and pepper here. Got to get it out of my cabinet. And I've got some olive oil. So I'm just going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil onto all of these vegetables. And I'm going to season it up with a little bit of salt. And some pepper. Okay. And I've got my spice cabinet here open. I've got a ton of spices. So I love spices. I love cooking with all kinds of things, you know, as spice-wise. So I think I'm going to add the all-purpose seasoning, salt, pepper, garlic, and onion powder. Add a little bit of garlic powder to this because it just makes everything taste better. And always season with your heart because it'll tell you when to stop. I add a little bit of onion powder. And let's see. Let's add some thyme. I love the earthiness and woodiness of thyme. So, so good. Let's do a little bit of smoked paprika. I think that will go really, really good with the sausages that we're going to put on there. And I've got a little bit of steak seasoning here, which is a ton of different spices. So I'm just going to add just a little bit of that because it does have a little bit of a kick to it. I'm not really feeling spicy today. I'm going to add just a little bit of that, and I'm going to give all this a toss, make sure all of that is nice and coated in that seasoning, and kind of break up that onion a little bit. So it cooks evenly. We want all of these vegetables to cook down and get all nice and delicious. All right, I think I've got them all coated in that sauce, or that spice, I should say. And that olive oil is going to help it toast up rather nicely. It smells so good. All right, so I'm going to give my hands a little rinse, and then we'll add the chicken sausage. All right, so I've got my chicken sausage here. This is the apple chicken, or chicken and apple. So I'm just going to nestle these right in here. No rhyme or reason. Just add them right in there. And this is the brand that I'm using. I think it's called Adele's. It is the chicken and apple. These are absolutely delicious. If you've not tried these, I highly recommend you try them. They're really, really good. So I'm just going to drizzle a little olive oil over the sausages, and it's going to help them get nice and crisp and cooked through. So I'm just going to put this in the oven, and I'm going to let this cook for about 20 to 25 minutes. Come in, flip everything over, give it a toss, put it back in there and let it cook until the vegetables are nice and tender and caramelized and the chicken sausages are completely cooked through. In the meantime, I'm going to make some rice to go with it. So I will show you what everything looks like as soon as it gets done. All right, you guys, here is my plate. I just made some turmeric rice, which I think I have on my blog. My blog is always linked down in the description box below, so you can go and check out all of my recipes. Anyways, I've got the sausage here as well as the vegetables, and this was absolutely delicious and very filling. We had a ton of leftovers. Now, I know this is a short video this week. It has been a crazy, crazy week with the hard freeze here. Everything was a mess, but I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you are new, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.